Hey everybody. So at this point in the process, it's time to really up your architectural style. Instead of just looking at red brick and this super generic roof, we want to start thinking about how we can incorporate some of your clients' architectural style features to your design. And it's actually pretty easy to do. So for example, if your client wanted a Mediterranean Spanish style home, even though you're working with some designs that are fairly limited, you can do quite a bit to change the surface aesthetics of this home. Most notably, if you look at this red brick that's not a characteristic of a Mediterranean style home, you would want to change this to a white or a cream colored stucco. Also, instead of having a generic asphalt roof, you might consider changing it to a red terracotta tile instead. So this is how you can do it. I'm going to start by clicking on this wall, and I'm going to go to Edit Type. The most important thing that you have to do is duplicate this style. By duplicating it, it allows you to make a brand new material, and then you won't be overwriting this brick on metal stud material. So I'm going to go ahead and call this stucco. You're more than welcome to call it whatever material you'd like, depending on what you're making. So once my exterior type has been changed to stucco, I'm going to go over here to structure. We're going to keep everything here as is, except this thermal air layer, we don't need this. This is really just to allow the bricks to weep. So I'm going to delete that since we're not working with a brick exterior. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this material from brick to something new. So I'm going to click on a new material here. I'm going to rename this stucco, and you can do that by right-clicking on it. And I will say that I want to add a new feature to it, because right now it's just set to generic. So if I open up the asset browser, I can search for stucco. And I can see that this is exactly what I want. So I'm going to double click on it and close out of my asset browser. And you're going to see that this now updates to this stucco material. You can actually see the texture in here. If I go over to my identity, or my graphics rather, I want to change my shading to something that looks a little bit more like stucco itself. So I'm going to click on this color, and I'm going to change it to this lighter white and add a little bit of yellow to make it look a bit creamier. Something like that looks good. And say OK. Now I'm going to also add a cut pattern. So when I'm looking at my house in a hidden line view style, I'm going to see this texture. I'll say OK. So now when I say OK and say OK here, we're going to see that my wall now looks a bit more like stucco. At this point, I can hold down Control, I can select my remaining walls, and I can change those to my new material here. Just like that. Now for the roof, if I click on my roof, I'm going to make sure it's set to this wood rafter. Yours can be something similar. And I'm going to do the same process. So Edit Type, duplicate my material, and I'm going to call this terracotta and say OK. If I go into Edit the structure, the only thing I'm going to change is my finish material. So I'm going to click on the little dot next to my asphalt shingles material. I'm going to create a new material, right-click on it and rename it to terracotta roofing. And go to my asset library, and I'm going to search for terracotta. Once that comes up, I can double-click on the asset name. Nothing's going to happen, so I'm just going to close out of this, and we're going to see that it's updated in my roofing material. If I go over to its graphics appearance, I'm going to make sure Use Render Appearance is checked, which will show this color. And for this, let's not worry about the surface pattern. We'll say, okay. So for here, notice that without the surface pattern, it just shows up as this generic red color. If you want to show more of the texture, you can always go back to Edit Type, go back to Edit Structure, edit the terracotta material, and change the foreground cut pattern to maybe this crosshatch or something that you think is more appropriate. All right, there we go. Now we can also do the same thing on windows and doors. So if you don't like the way that your doors look, you can click on it, go to Edit Type. Once again, you can duplicate it. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this white. And you can go in and you can just change the panel material. So if I click on the dot, 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 I can change it to clad white and say OK. And if I say OK again, that should update it. But if you want to look at a preview before you make any changes, so it looks like it's only giving me my 2D view. We'll go ahead and say OK. That will update to white. If you notice here, my framing here is still set to wood. So I could just go in here again. And I can make sure that my frame material here was also set to that clad white. And I would do the same thing with the remaining things that are set to cherry. There we go. And that's how you start to add some of these smaller details that will start to make some of your own architectural features come out. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching.